All right. Um, so you see here a lot of pictures of a lot of persons because we're always talking about person, and that's the name Esther. It's about a person with a life. We take the next one just to set you in the context of Esther. Sanat, can you give me? Yes. Um, we are talking about the simple rules. And the simple rules is that we have the question, what's best for Esther, as the first question. And when we know the answer for that question, we need to listen to Esther. We need to really try to go in her shoes and know it is important for her. And after the answer of that question, we will organize for the best for her. We do take responsibility for what we have to do, maybe in healthcare or in social care or where we are. But we also have to see there is a process. Esther is not staying in your place. She is somewhere else before she's coming to you, and she's going somewhere else after she's coming to you. So take the responsibility to give feedback before, but also make it easy for the people who will take care of Esther after that she visited you. And we always do this kind of improvement work together with Esther. So also today, I want to really say welcome to the Esthers in the room. I don't know all of them. I know a few of them. I know there are a few from Sweden, but I think there are a lot of from Island of Wight. And I know that you're also here for the first time. So I hope you feel comfortable and just be present as you are, and you can write in the chat. Everybody can do that. You can put on your hand if you want to say something, but we will go in breakout rooms after the presentation, and there you can present yourself in the small breakout rooms. So we are not going to do a big presentation of everybody. We are doing that in the breakout rooms. So, with that said, here is the program. I know it's the program from the time that maybe is in Canada or in England. In Sweden, it's 2 o'clock. But we have 1 hour. We do welcome. We go into the model. Then we have breakout rooms. You have 20 minutes. And after the breakout rooms, we will try to harvest and condense what did we learn in our breakout rooms. We will have a short Menti. We will also talk a little bit about the next webinar, who Maria is going to do, and Maria is in the room today. So maybe, Maria, you can prepare some sentences. What are you going to do in the next webinar? And then we will have the end. Yes, go ahead, Gillian and Christina and Jen. And I know you present yourself, so I don't do that. Very welcome.
Thanks so much, Nicolene. My name is Gillian Mulville, and I'm from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And I'm going to be presenting today with my colleagues, Jen, and also my colleague Jen, and also Christina, who is an Esther. So somebody who's very involved from a lived experience perspective in the Esther model. And I'm also here with Sandra Mull, my co-lead of the Equity-Based Co-Creation Research Center at McMaster University. So today we're talking about Esther, but we're also talking about two other co-production programs. And what really drove this research was an interest in how did they get started, given that they're quite disruptive. They challenge existing hierarchical structures within health and social care systems, and they're often largely motivated from the bottom up rather than the top down. And that was really what was curious for us. But not only did they manage to do this, but they managed to spread and continue to grow and sometimes slide back. But we wanted to understand that entire process. And the other thing about them is they really create an opportunity to meaningfully engage structurally marginalized and equity deserving groups. And so we'll get started with that in mind because that was another reason it was really important for us to look at these models. So when we talk about co-production, what do we mean? Co-production positions people with lived and living experience as equal partners in shaping health and social services. And we know that's definitely not the norm in most systems. We tend to have an expert, and then tend to have somebody receiving the benefit of that wisdom. Co-production says, no, no, actually, we all have important lived experience as equal partners to share. And so, what did we learn? We had a 4-year case study. Jen's going to go into that a bit more on the next slide of 3 programs around the world. What we wanted to know was, how does co-production get taken up across organizations, and then how does it spread elsewhere? Over to you, Jen.
Thanks, Jillian. So as Jillian mentioned, we studied 3 co-production programs that were shared within an international network as being potentially information rich, meaning we could have a lot to learn from them. There were 9 sites across 5 countries. As Jillian mentioned, one of things we were looking at was programs that had spread to other places. So some of these programs spread regionally, some spread internationally or nationally, and then others spread internationally. And over a period of 4.5 years, we conducted 71 interviews with people with lived or living experience, health professionals and service providers, as well as folks in management or leadership roles, and also analyzed 32 documents across the different sites. So documents describing their aims and objectives and their approaches. And we took a team-based approach. We had a research team that was international itself. We had local co-production program leads as part of our team, as well as people with lived experience who participated on the research team and as researchers. And Christina was one of those people with lived experience researchers. So I'm wondering, Christina, do you have a few words about what your experience was like participating in this research with us?
Yes, it was very interesting. I was lecturing about psychological safety and power dynamics with Nicoline and Marie, another patient representative. And another time I was taking notes when ESTHER coaches went through further education. I noticed who talked a lot, who took or was giving the power, and so on. That was really interesting to be a part.
Thank you very much. So as over this 4.5 years, we spent a lot of time going back to these various groups and communities to talk about our learnings as we developed this model. So we think it was a really rich process across this time. Next slide, please. And Jillian, are you doing this one?
Do you want to continue, Jen?
I can, yeah. So this is just a brief introduction to the 3 co-production programs that we studied. As Jillian mentioned, ESTHER is one of them, which began in Sweden, as many as you know, and we studied the spread to Singapore and Kenton Medway Council in England. And ESTHER is an initiative where the co-production was around system improvements to meet the needs of people requiring complex care. Our second program was the Recovery College model, which was originally developed in England, and we studied its adaptation in the province of Manitoba in Canada. And in Manitoba, they renamed them to learning centers, and we studied 3 different branches of the Canadian Mental Health Association in Manitoba. So in Winnipeg, their central branch, and the Swan Valley branch, which is more north. And the learning centers or recovery colleges are programs where courses to improve mental health well-being and recovery are co-produced and co-delivered with people with lived experience. And the third program was Making Recovery Real in Scotland. It originated in the city of Dundee in Scotland, where they were focused on co-producing service experiences and outcomes for people with mental health issues, so around recovery, the concept of recovery in mental health and wellness, originally developed in the city of Dundee, but then spread to the areas of Fife and Aberdeenshire within Scotland. Next slide, please.
So I apologize for the busy slide. I just want to give you a brief overview of the pieces we're going to talk about in the next slide. So you don't have to read all the detail here. I just want you to get a sense that we adopted the metaphor of a plant cycle. When we were listening to our participants, we kept hearing commentary around growth, development, fading, expansion. So we wanted to bring life to the model. And we also, as we dove deeper into the data, we found that the plant cycle was a really lovely metaphor, that this notion of a kind of this disruptive change around bringing people with lived experience with equal power in system improvement started with a few people. So that's germinating, bringing that idea to life. Then it began to take off just a little bit in a very protected way, and that was sprouting, and people came to believe it could work. The third phase we noticed was blossoming. Here it's established and it's spreading all across organizations and systems, transforming mindsets. Next phase was propagating. Other people wanted to get on board, either locally or further away. So it was a process of mentoring others who wanted to start the program. And then finally, that became a community garden. So growing a whole group of a system or a network like we're hearing today, where people are teaching and learning together. Of course, there were risks to that. I didn't put on this slide to make it less busy, that their context mattered, but we did add that sometimes programs failed. Wilting would happen, and often due to changes in the climate, or as these new programs came on board, we repeated the cycle. They repeated the cycle. So that's just a quick overview. So the first phase, we're just going to go phase by phase here, germinating, bringing the idea to life. Here we saw, as I mentioned, a small group of passionate people. You can see in this quote, the four of us were very passionate, all in steering groups and having voice. These people worked off the sides of their desks to generate opportunities to bring lived experience into often ongoing quality improvement initiatives. And that really changed those initiatives completely. It took this small group to nurture and protect. Sometimes this was done almost in secret, so that the powers that be didn't know what was going on. They just knew the improvement was proceeding, but they didn't know the involvement of lived experience, the extent of it. And then embracing mentorship along the way. Every single case had an outside group or an inside group that really helped make this happen. So you can see in the quote, we've all got day jobs. We're fully full-time people, but we got our heads together and we found a way to make this work. We said, somehow we're going to make this work. Next slide, please. So sprouting, as I said, is this phase where we come to believe it can work. This small group, it doesn't feel quite so isolated. They find other partners, sometimes at other organizations, who could bring in either funding or other insights, perhaps participants. And so they partnered. And what was really important at this stage, we weren't just listening to lived experience, we're acting on it. And that required shifting power. And as this quote says, sometimes that met a lot of resistance. But as that was overcome, people started to gain confidence and often were acknowledged for this work, receiving external awards, internal awards. Something happened that made them say, we've arrived. Christina, do you want to comment on your experience in this phase?
Yes. I had a friend that wasn't allowed to lecture in a class with doctors who were learning about co-production and person-centered care because they didn't want to listen to a patient. They didn't even want to have a patient in the room. But this was 10 years ago, about 10 years. We have seen an important shift. All the professionals seem to want to have patients in the room now, and they know that we mostly are very positive.
Fantastic. Next slide, please. So the next phase was blossoming. So now they feel they've arrived and it starts to spread across organizations. A key marker was establishing shared values that would guide all the work. And those values were so important because they captured people's imagination, whether they were people with lived experience or health professionals who said, oh, this took me back to the reason I became a whatever clinician in the first place. It resonated so strongly. And that inspired their commitment. This process allowed them to share ownership. So it wasn't top down. Change was happening from the grassroots bottom up. And that allowed all of these people to become advocates and help to establish infrastructure to keep the program going. So we have this amazing quote from Esther. Once we had those shared values and the three questions, what's best for Esther, being the predominant one, the news was coming over. This was inspiring and capturing imagination. Videos were being made in other countries, and Esther was just spreading like a social movement. We didn't have to do very much. So the ownership was shared. It was just going. And it was kind of go with the flow because, yeah, this was going. Christina, do you want to comment on that one at all?
Not so much, but I've been involved in the co-production course here in Jönköping University. And we are several persons with lived experience involved. And I'm also a part of a group researchers in Jönköping University looking at the processes and methods of co-production. And of course, I've also been a part of ESTHER Coach education in the region, which is more a practical sort of education. And we are equal.
That's great. I think that shows the breadth of impact. This isn't just where the program started in health and social service. It's gone way beyond, and it's truly transforming mindsets. People are looking at the world differently now. Next slide, please. So propagating is then, as I say, in the blossoming phase, people often received mentorship. Now we are mentoring others who are starting as the cycle repeats. So expanding across organizations, leading through lived experience. So we've gone from, ooh, can we bring lived experience in to people who've been involved start sharing and encouraging others and demonstrating the importance of their own leadership, cultivating local offshoots, disseminating ideas broadly, and adapting to local climates, often moving to other countries with completely different socioeconomic, political, cultural contexts. And here's an example from when Singapore adopted. We had a quote saying, well, we want to know exactly what the steps are to follow. And the answer being, no, you have to make this your own, Esther, because although it's frustrating, I can't give you the exact steps. This will be what makes it sustainable. As you build this together with your people, it will adapt to your own climate. Christina, was there anything there you wanted to add?
No, just that I also use my knowledge of co-production within the patient organization where I'm a member, and we work together with different sorts of groups. So we use the co-production knowledge.
Excellent. And then growing a community garden. Next slide, please. Teaching and learning. So once we have more than one a site with a particular model, what we saw is they began to teach and learn together. No one group being dominant, so that mentoring happened from the origin site, but learning goes always, or all directions within this thriving ecosystem of programs. And so we see in the metaphor cross-pollinating, sharing resources, ideas coming from one site to another. We also saw instances in Manitoba, for example, where one site was struggling. There's a leadership change. There was no more money for producing new courses in the Recovery College or the Learning Center. So another site said, here, take our courses. We can keep you going. We can fuel you through this struggling period. And now we see system-wide change happening. It starts beyond and spreads beyond the original organization. The risk is that it can go back to, oh, this is our program, let's protect it. This is our territory, let's take ownership. So overcoming that was one of the risks during this phase as well that we heard about. So the quote gives us some piece on all of those aspects. And a quote from Winnipeg, Canada. Look, we are learning and we're staying connected with people internationally, and that helps us stay on top of the best evidence and emerging practices. Christina, anything from Sweden on that?
Yes, we think that all teach and all learn. We don't tell you what to do. We are all going to learn together. We depend on each other. Sometimes when you dance, we may step on each other's toes, but then we do apologize to each other and just go on because we want to learn to dance.
Beautiful. Next slide. As I said, there's a risk of wilting. Once a program blossoms, the growth doesn't stop, and programs need to continue to adapt within their changing climates. Some programs will stagnate, wilt, and could eventually die. And this is a beautiful quote, I think, from Singapore, Esther in Singapore, one of the participants. It's great that we have all of these ESTHER coaches. Those are the seeds that we've planted, but how deep are the roots and how nurturing is the soil? So speaking to the context, we have to tend it such that we don't get one or two harvests and then after that, no more. The risk is that we have to be constantly careful that while we generate or develop new coaches at the micro level, how deeply rooted is that? Jen, do you want to talk about the example from Portage la Prairie here?
Yeah, so Jillian alluded to it a little bit. So one of the learning centers in Manitoba was experiencing a lengthy period of leadership changes or gaps in leadership. And they were one of the original sites in Winnipeg and having difficulty with capacity within the organization to continue to develop new co-production new recovery college and learning center materials and courses. And that's where the network of branches in Manitoba stepped in. Other branches were able to share their courses with them if it was on a topic that the Portage la Prairie site had identified with their community, that was a topic that they were in need of or were interested in. And they did that for a few years to keep their learning center functioning and continuing to grow. And then eventually there was the opportunity for two branches that had learning centers to be co-managed by a single leader. And that leader, one of their first priorities was to get that struggling learning center back into its co-production activities again. So they were carried for a few years by their partnership, and then helped to continue on their own once the climate allowed for that.
Great. Thanks, Annette. And we're almost done here. We've mentioned and we've alluded to these climate factors, and this is what we often hear about in implementation science literature. What's the context, and you have to adapt to it. And we talked about a microclimate in which we look at what's that context for provider lived experience interactions. If it's a super hierarchical system, it's going to be very, very hard to go forward with a model like this. And so that's something that you need to think about. Also, the mesoclimate, leadership, resources, our leaders on board. They don't need to drive this, but they need to have a sense of security and trust in what the outcomes of a bottom-up process are going to be, and willing to be hands-off and believe in it and let that happen. Resources, of course, are critical, but we do know that you start before you have all of those resources lined up, and you partner with the willing and you find ways. It's a very creative approach. And then the macroclimate, the policy, the funding, the culture you're in can all influence whether this is going to work. And changes are going to happen in these climate factors all the time. And rather than a top-down model where we see these as all separate, we really felt that this was a Venn diagram where they interrelate. And I don't know, Christina, do you want to emphasize that point for us? Because you really brought that forward.
Because I love this picture with the circles. And when we are talking about the micro, meso, and macro as up and down, I don't like it because it's better horizontal, but this is the best in the circles.
Wonderful. Okay, and then to wrap up, I guess our key messages, transformation is a process. It's not an outcome. The models themselves are going to evolve and change over time. People with lived experience are partners for grassroots value-driven change, and those values are essential. No one ever wavered from them once they were established. Creating conducive and safe climates are important, and adapting to what you've got, trying to find a way to continue even if it's a harsh climate. Meaningful change does take time. This didn't happen overnight. And it's critical to keep people sustained, energizing and inspiring them so they want to be involved. And this is a picture. It's dated now for Esther's 20th birthday, Esther cake celebration. There's a whole story about Esther cakes we don't have time for. And this beautiful quote, they feel like they've been on a journey and it's not been easy, but it's been quite a joyful one. So that's it for the presentation. Next slide. So we're going to move into small groups now, and we'd like to ask you in your own groups to talk about, does the model resonate with your experience, any piece of it? And oh, sorry, there's some background sound there. Can you relate to any of the phases of the model? I'll turn it over to Sinat to organize us.
And please present yourself very shortly in your breakout rooms. And let just the conversation go on. I think you will have about 15 or 20 minutes. We will just get you back when you get the message. It's time to go back. Yeah.
So I have the challenge of trying to wrap up interesting conversations in the breakout to bring them back together. We have maybe about 10 minutes or so, but we wanted to bring back into the room, what people are doing in their respective places in the world, and what resonates for you in terms of the model, and can you relate to any phases of this? And we don't have time for everybody to say everything, but maybe we can touch on each of if there was a group that can maybe report back into what their discussion was.
Can we just pick a group somewhere?
Yeah, I was going to say Esther. Esther from Singapore, do you want to start? Since your name is Esther, you get invited.
Yes. Okay, so my group, we have I think Jane from England, and Carlene from Canada, and also Anders and Maria from Sweden. So we talk about where we are. I think the model definitely resonates because all of us are involved in some form of co-production in the different areas of work that we are doing, working with patients, finding creative ways leveraging on technology to get our esters involved. And the second question about where we are, so I think Jane talked about, because they started in 2023 in the UK, so they are at the stage of sprouting and blossoming. And that is like a very exciting stage. When you see a plant sprout out, it's very exciting. And then for myself, on reflection for Singapore, we are at the stage of growing a community garden. But at the same time, we have also experienced some weeding as well as some kind of challenge, because there are also other pots of flowers growing in that garden, not just the Ester network. So, but we have managed that by working together. So it is about integrating, for example, we have a group that is like a PPI, a public and patient and public involvement group. So we are also kind of cross-pollinating by having some of their members join us as ESTHERs and vice versa. And we are also, working with groups like value-based care to also learn from them how to make better measurements. And we are also teaching them how to engage ESTHER in a more genuine, less tokenistic manner. So other members, please feel free to chime in.
Thanks, Esther. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was great, Celine.
So lots there around, I think, different language, patient and public involvement groups, value-based care, measurement-based care is kind of themed, technology as well. And where does that fit? Very nice. Does another group want to go? Gillian, your group?
So we didn't designate a single person, but we did find people in all different phases. So maybe I could invite Anne to talk about what phase she thinks she's in.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. Hi, everyone. My name's Anne Thompson. I'm a pharmacy lead in Glasgow in Scotland, and I also work with Scottish Government on our value-based health and care programme as part of realistic medicine. And myself and colleagues were visiting Sweden the other week at Qualturum, so kind of just learning about the ESTHER movement, etc. But within Scotland and within my health board, I guess we're probably at the really early sowing stages of this. So it's person dependent, a lot of this just now, in terms of trying to do what we can within our sphere of influence around engagement to then build the information and build the case for how the information then drives change to how you approach work. And then try and use that to kind of build a more systematic approach to true co-production rather than engagement in the kind of less intensive sense. So there's a few of us kind of trying to drive this forward, and I guess just probably at the stage just now trying to work out who and how we join this up to get stronger leadership support, so that it is something that is kind of culturally prioritised rather than just a nice to do that's driven by individual people. But recognising, I think, the time it takes to do this and not to give up, because, and I think that's why where the growing analogy is really useful, because sometimes it can feel like it is taking ages, and that's quite hard, particularly if you're used to working in quite a systematic culture within a health system. So I thought that was really helpful just to take stock of where you're at, but also comparatively with these other organisations who have been doing this for 20 or 30 years. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story, and it does speak to that gardening, growing, and it isn't always linear, right? I mean, we talked about the iterative process and again, infrastructure, cultivating ideas, building community to really transform change. Yeah, love that.
Am I allowed to suggest another, or do you want to go on to another group?
Sure.
Yeah. I wonder if Kian wants to speak as well, because she's kind of repeating the cycle, which is neat.
Hello, everyone. My name's Kian. I am a clinical skills associate for Hampshire and Isle of Wight NHS Trust in the UK. And previous to this job role, so I'm in education now. Previous to this job role, I'd done my ESTHER training when I was working with a community nursing team. I think I was kind of nearly at the early stages of blossoming, because we were trying to create the ESTHER cafes and working with the care homes. But unfortunately, then I moved jobs. I've been in this role just over a year now, so it's taken me a little while to settle in. But I want to bring ESTHER into my teaching role as well. So I'm just going through kind of back to probably the sowing stage, where it kind of done a little circle back round. But I'm looking forward to educating, obviously, my team about ESTHER and about our staff members that come onto our training. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward with this.
You know, it's one of the exciting things about this webinar is there's people from all around the world who are doing this work and driving this work. It's really exciting to hear what's happening in different parts of the country or the nation, the internationally. Nicolene, I know you're prompting me about time. Do you want to do a bit of a summary of our group and take us to the next step?
I was thinking I was inviting Göran's group. Göran, what happened in your group? Or maybe Josephine wants to tell something about that. So please. I think that was group number. Oh, where is the group?
I don't
It's
think I should have any of the time now because Rebecca in our group has some really nice stories to tell us about her work in Vancouver. So, Rebecca, are you there? I think you did such a fantastic job, so it would be nice for everyone to hear about it.
Sure, I didn't know I was going to be the spokesperson for our group.
Surprise.
Happy to share. So I was just telling my group the demographic that I work with is often different. Just my main boots on the ground place of work is neonatal intensive care. And so trying to bring in family-centered care with that, and often the clientele that I work with are undergoing substance use issues, right? And first of all, hearing the nuances of a neonate is very different than hearing an Esther who has the capacity to speak, right? So it is very intentional cue reading on a neonatal level. Secondly, that everyone deserves to have a voice. So whether it's a neonate or whether it's a mom who's struggling with substance abuse issues, everyone just wants their voice heard. And so to be able to like level the silos and just look into Esther's eyes and just ask, what are your strengths, or what do you want for yourself? By focusing on the strengths that the person, the Esther, brings to the table really is empowering, and giving them a voice, and then in them owning their care and being given a place in the story, there's so much weight to that. And so I think we're probably at the beginning stages here on the western side of Canada. But it is starting, so I'm hopeful, and that's kind of a different context to be hearing Esther in, but every Esther deserves a voice. So
That's a beautiful place to end on, I think. And it talks about how do we center lived experience in a meaningful, authentic way where you look at people's eyes. It's such a beautiful way of describing that. And also thank you to the West Coast where it's very early. It's 3 hours. What is it? 5 a.m. or something for you. So it speaks to the dedication. So thanks, Rebecca, for that. All right, Nicolene, I will turn it to you.
Yes, thank you, Sandra, for a wonderful facilitation, and thank you all for your wonderful contributions. Please take your telephone and take the QR code, and you can write your takeaways, because then we also see that all people in this room can have a voice, as Rebecca said. Everybody needs to have a voice. So your telephone and the QR code, and start writing. Then now I can share the results immediately so we can see what all the people are thinking. If you can stop sharing yours, I can share at my place.
Yes. Hopefully everyone got a chance to scan that. Go ahead.
I hope so. So something is happening in my place. So yes, I think people are writing.
Great.
So do you see the results?
Yes, we do.
Good. And here it is coming. Rebecca sharing, and so early in the morning, Rebecca, but it's wonderful. The garden. So I think the metaphor and the model is doing the work, Sandra and Gillian. People are related to a garden needs to have some caring and sharing. Otherwise, a garden will not blossom. Yeah, it's wonderful. The value of mentors. And in this webinar, we all are your mentor and we all are mentors to each other. So if wherever you are in the model, you can find support and help in this network. Let's see.
And the comment, programs can move back and forth between different phases before it blossoms. Absolutely. I don't think I emphasized that, but definitely. It's not a linear and it's circular and it can move all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. That other people globally have the same mindset for this vision of care. That's very helpful. That we know there are like-minded people, and you need like-minded people to keep you going, to keep your energy. Yes. See the person and not just the patient. Christina being here and participating actively. Yes, Christina, of course. Wonderful, wonderful work. This QR code is active for 2 days. So maybe you suddenly think, oh, yes, this was also very nice. Then you can write that. Sanat, can I go over to you and can you share again before we take the last one?
Yes, thank you, Nicole.
So I hope that Maria is, oh, this was yours, Gillian. Yes. Then I take the next one.
I
Go
also
ahead.
put the links to this stuff, the newsletter, in the chat, so we don't have to spend too much time on this. But through subscribing to our newsletter, you get notified when there's a new a webinar like this one and other opportunities with the EQCC Hub, and also any opportunities through the ESTHER network, which is a strong partner for us.
Yeah, and from the people from Sweden, it's always about co-production. So that it's clear that we also can be there, and it's very interesting for us from ESTHER to join this newsletter and to join your webinars as well. Yes, and then we take the next one. Thank you, Tsanat. And the next one, we will have another webinar in September. Maybe Adam, I can maybe challenge you to have a webinar. I don't know. I always challenge people in the room. We would like to have a webinar in September. So if somebody's feeling that, okay, we can host it, please let us know. But otherwise, in October, we will have a webinar about when patients become learning partners. And that will be Maria who is hosting. And Maria, I think you are in the room now. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
A little bit, I can. Yes, we would like to share some of our learning journey of different initiatives with focus on involving people with lived experiences. And we will give you some examples and also hopefully make some new learning together when we meet in October. So we are looking forward to that, my colleague Louise Nordlund Johansson and I. See you then.
Yes, that will be wonderful. So if you have any colleagues or other persons who you think are interested in this, please give us the email and we can invite them. And thank you so much, all of you, the presenters, but also all the people participating in the room and in the breakout rooms for your engagement, for going up early or staying up late in the evening. I know, Esther Lim, that you have holidays in Singapore. So that's also impressive that people are coming during their holidays at 8 o'clock in the evening. So again, wonderful to have you here. You are giving me energy. So remember that we are giving each other the energy. So thank you so much for being here.